And so I thought I'll just end with an E, episode 2. I thought I'll just make a video on it right now. I think this will be the last one I'll make on this show, even though I could make a lot more. The whole show is awesome. Go ahead and watch all 9 episodes and let me know which one was your favorite, because every one of them is pretty good. I didn't like episode 9 as much because, it sets up for season 2, I guess, and I don't like the direction it's going. I want to know more about her and her past and whatnot, but hopefully it will turn out great. But I want to talk about episode 2 because, at the end of episode 1, we see that Anne is going back to the asylum or the orphanage, and in this episode she gets there and she doesn't want to stay there, so she decides to run away, right? And all the while Matthew is chasing after her and try to find her so he could bring her back, because Marilla made a mistake in episode 1 and called Anne a thief, because Marilla thought that she did steal something from her, a brooch, and so she chases her away. But Marilla realizes that she made a mistake. Now they want Anne to come back home. So Matthew's on her way to get her, and Anne is just running away. She doesn't want to go back to the asylum. They call it the asylum, but it's an orphanage because, not too many fond memories there. She wants to just go ahead and try to make it on her own. So she's at a train station trying to run away, and she doesn't have any money, so she's reciting poems to make money to buy tickets for the train. And by this time, Matthew catches up to her and tries to bring her back home, but Anne is, she's very innocent. She doesn't trust him anymore. She doesn't think that, why would she trust him? That she will go back to his house, and then with this fear of them kicking her out once again, right? So she wants to make it on her own. She doesn't want to go back. And then comes the scene where he calls her his daughter, right? Now, that scene made me cry, all right? Because she's feisty, she's fighting back. She doesn't want to go back with Matthew. But as soon as she hears the word, this is my daughter, she runs to him and gives him a big hug, And you have to tear up for that. Because here's a person who doesn't trust anybody, who has gone through a lot of problems in her life, and she thinks that nobody likes her. She's going to be alone for the rest of her life, but she's okay with it because she's got this great imagination. And she recites that a quote from Jane Eyre's once again: "If the world hated you and believed you wicked, but your own conscience approved of you and absolved from guilt, you would not be without friends." What she's saying basically is, hey, I could do this on my own because I approve me of myself. That is great. And to me, I really like that scene because, not that I was brought up in an orphanage or anything. I mean, I have parents and whatnot, but, she kind of reminds me of myself a little bit, because although my life was not as bad as Anne with an E, but I do kind of understand being the outcast of society, all right? Because to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know if you have ever done this, but if you go on the internet and look up, mental disorders, like OCD, ODD, ADD, AC, what is it, anyway, those kind of stuff. If you look those things up, even Asperger's, and you look at all the symptoms, what kind of symptoms those kind of disorders, a person with that disorder would have, I promise you about 80% of them, I'm thinking, hey, that's me, that's me. I always felt like an outcast because I don't belong. And imagine me being a pastor. I used to go to pastors' meetings, and I say used to because I just walked out and I said, I'm not going to go back because I felt such like an outsider, because I don't think like most of them, well, all of them do. And it's really, I have never met another pastor who would think like I do, like never. And so imagine that. I mean, Anne is a lot worse, but at least I kind of understand why she wants to be alone. So I guess that's why if I look back, I never really had, friends. I had a best friend, like one best friend in high school, and then I lost contact with him. I have one best friend in college and lost contact with him because I felt like, in a way, I felt like I didn't want to be a bother to them because I caused a lot of problems. Not that I want to cause problems, you see, but I tend to say things or act in a way that embarrasses people, and I'm sure, some of you might have some of that symptoms as well. I don't know. But I mean, I approve myself though. I never understood why people think I'm weird, but everybody that I ever knew in my life, every single person have said, "Hey, Andy, you're pretty weird. You're a weird guy." But I never did that. I felt like I was weird. I approve of myself. In fact, I could say I like myself. And if you feel that way, then, as the quote goes, you would not be without friends. And in fact, what Bible says in Proverbs, I would say 18:24, but I'm not 100% sure. But it says something like, a man of many companions will come to a ruin, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother, And I always thought that was Jesus Christ. And since I couldn't make close friends in this world, I always thought, man, at least Jesus is by my side in a way, right? And I always felt that was enough. That was good. And plus, I got a beautiful wife and 2 wonderful children. And beyond that, I don't know. I mean, that's wonderful. It's really good. And it was really touching seeing where Anne is, hugging him, because to be called a daughter for the first time, she must have been, overwhelmed, with joy and happiness that she gives him a big hug. To be able to just say, this is where I belong. This is the person that I belong to. It's wonderful, and it's really great. Now, she goes back with Matthew, and Marilla is the one that kicked her out, and there's this awkward scenes for a while, but, they go to this church picnic together, and I thought that was, it was cool, I guess. They're at a church picnic, and you would think that everyone at church would reach out to her and welcome her and whatnot, but I guess things were different back then or whatnot. They were looking down at her and making fun of her, and she's hurt once again, and she runs away from the picnic, and it was Marilla that chases after her this time and apologizes and asks Anne for her forgiveness. And they have a little conversation there that I thought it was beautifully done. They make a real connection there, right? So this uncertainty that Anne had, not knowing where she belonged, when Marilla actually asked for forgiveness, I think that's kind of a place at a time where she felt like, okay, this is where I belong, right? And she doesn't come out and say, I forgive you, but there's once again touching scene, had me tear up once again when Anne kind of scoots over next to Marilla and puts her head on Marilla's shoulder. That's wonderful. I mean, that's family. It's like people who are all broken, right? All 3 of them are broken. Matthew, Marilla, they all have broken stories, and you could see that in the other episodes. Anne is definitely a broken person, but coming together and sharing love for one another, to be able to hug each other and say, I belong to you, kind of whatnot. And it's great. I thought it was wonderfully done. But as they're talking, Anne actually asked this question, and I thought it was a great question, perfect question. Whoever wrote this episode did a wonderful job. It says, are you apologizing, or are you coming after me? This is what Anne says to Marilla, out of sense of obligation, or do you really want me? Are you doing this because you're obligated to do so, or do you want me? And I thought that was perfect, and I like that, because I feel like a lot of times as a Christian, when you go to church, or even as with my parents too, they kind of make you say you need to follow God and whatnot, because it is your obligation to. You need to trust in God because it's obligation to. If Jesus Christ died for you, now you have an obligation to follow him and love him and things like that, And I really don't like that word. Are you doing this out of an obligation? Do you really like me? And a lot, that's a real question to a lot of people who go to church. Maybe we could say the same thing too. Do you go to church, or do you do things in the sense of out of obligation? You feel like you have to do it, or do you want to do it? And I think that's a fair question. That's why a lot of times when parents, some people talk about, the sacrifices they're making, and I don't like that word, sacrifice, because, I think I mentioned it before. If you say I sacrifice something, that means you really want to do something else, right? That's what you're saying. I really want to do something else, but out of obligation, I'm going to sacrifice that and do something for you, like someone saying, sacrifices you made for your children. Well, I hope you're not making sacrifices. I'm hoping that people are doing things for their children because they want to do it, not in the sense of obligation. I thought that was a good question. It kind of made me think. Do I talk to my kids? Do I, try to be nice to my wife and all that kind of sense of obligation? Or is it because, I really want them in my life? That's a fair question, I think, right? And in that conversation, as they're talking, one of the confessions that Marilla makes is that she's the one that pushed Anne to lie. And I thought that was really good too, because a lot of times, I think I mentioned on the episode 1, same thing here, a lot of times we push people to lie. We push people to learn to lie and to fake it. Bible never says thou shalt not lie, by the way. Anyways, once again, as a Christian, I think a lot of times we put so much pressure on people to follow God in a way and to be proper, to be holy and whatnot. A lot of people tend to fib, about their life. They don't share, as they say, their sins or whatever. They don't want to talk about it because they're supposed to be perfect. The way they look on the outside and how they behave matters more than their heart. So, I thought that was a good conversation they were having, and I really, once again, loved it when she just kind of scoots over to her and puts her head on her shoulder. And she's a truthful girl, innocent, truthful girl. Anne is, that's really good. Then, and at the end of episodes 2, is finally, it's not just, Matthew calling her daughter. It's not so much Marilla asking her to forgive her, but at the end, there's the open Bible with the family names and whatnot, and then Matthew and Marilla asks Anne basically to take on their last name, to be part of a family, right? And it's a wonderful scene, funny too, but it was done in such a wonderful way. And Anne basically saying, this is it, all I have to do is sign a piece of paper and I become, a family. There has to be some kind of a ceremony so we could remember, right? I guess that's why we have baptism ceremonies or birthday ceremonies and things like that, so you could remember, make it more special, if you will. But for Anne, this is something that is so special. She's gonna belong to a family. She is being adopted into the Cuthbert's family, and there's a sense of belonging. She doesn't have to worry about being sent away anymore and whatnot, And that is so wonderful, to finally belong. And the Bible says the same thing too, doesn't it? Bible says that we have been adopted into God's family. We don't have to worry about being chased out or going to hell or anything like that at all, even though for some reason church like to talk about it. And there's some preachers that actually say that if you believe in Jesus, you're going to go to heaven, but along the way, you decide not to believe in Jesus, then you're going to lose your salvation and go to hell, kind of a thing. And I thought that was really strange. It doesn't even make sense to me how God would do something like that, because if you're family, you're family, right? Regardless of how many mistakes we would make, we're always there for one another. That's what family is. That we have been adopted into God's family. We are taking in God's name. That's why we call it the testament of God anyways, right? The testament is He's writing something to us. Whether we receive it or not, like it or not, that's not the point. The point is this is God's testament. He has adopted us into His family, and that is it. There's nothing that we could do to take that away from what God wants to do. Right? And for Anne to feel like so secure is something that I think we all need to do as people who believe in Jesus Christ, to feel very secure. We're part of God's family, adopted into, we're heirs of God, co-heirs of Jesus Christ, as the Bible says. And there should be some comfort in that. And that's why sometimes I don't understand why Christians tend to talk about losing salvation. God hates this. God loves to discipline people, this and that, whatever. I mean, this guy Matthew treats Anne, better than how God treats us. It seems like, doesn't it? He never says, "Oh, I'm gonna, you better do this and this and this, or else you're no longer one of our family." There's no threat once you're in. You know what I'm saying? And that's good. And if you watch more of the episode, you see how good Matthew is to Anne and the things that he does to, make her feel special. There's a couple other scenes in other episodes that I do want to talk about. I won't make any more video on this, but please watch it because it's so wonderfully done. Your family to be forever, to be yours, and for you to be mine. Oh, that's great. Sometimes I wonder why in today's society that not many people want to get married. It's a wonder to me that they want to stay single, or even if they get married, they don't want to have children, or if they have children, not many, just one, or something like that. Because once again, it's just a bother, isn't it? To belong to one person, to call somebody, you're mine and I am yours. Nobody seems to care that much about it, even though it's so meaningful and wonderful to belong and to be a family. But not many people have that sense anymore, in a way, because people don't get married that much anymore. If they do, they marry, much later on in life somehow. People don't value marriage anymore. Our focus is on so many different things. And maybe that's the problem. We have so many things to do that we forget what is really important. And I think this show kind of reminded me of the importance of family, to able to belong to someone, right? Like, marriage is great, the whole idea of two becoming one and to raise a family. And I sure enjoyed it. I never complained about it. I think family is a wonderful thing. And this show kind of reminded me of that once again. So what did you think about episode 2? Did you like it? I'm sure you did. If you watched it, I'm sure you loved it. Please comment below on which part you liked the best. And if other episodes that you like, please comment below. I won't make another one on other episode, but I might. I don't know. Anyways, watch the rest of the episode. If you haven't seen this show yet, please do watch it. And thanks for joining me today. And I'll see you next time. God bless.